Hi, folks. It's Barry Chamish. I've got an unusual guest tonight, and you have to accept this reality for a while. I did. If I did, you did. Really. Look, his name is Peter van Zendran. He has an Iranian background. And what he said happened. Now, remember 10 days ago, there was a shooting. I think it killed one in Amarillo. But in the same 2-day period, there was Orlando. That was 49 dead. And there was Los Angeles, of course. And, of course, you had a rock star shot also in Amarillo. It was quite a stir there. All right, Peter, you there?
I'm there, Barry. I hope I'm coming in clear.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Now, let's just start with what you say happened in Amarillo. And by the way, listeners, keep in mind, I may have a few doubts here, all right? Go to it.
All right. Well, if you check my Facebook and my Twitter page, you'll see that I quoted directly from the Amarillo police site on what happened regarding the hostage situation over at the Amarillo Walmart. Essentially, the person who did the hostage, who held the people hostage there, Mohammed Moghaddam, this man, he wasn't just an employee, he was an Iranian Jew.
And no Jew would name their kid Mohammed. All right, that's something you should know. Very few Jews would name, because the name Moghaddam. We're not just talking about an Iranian Jewish family that have been there for years or decades. This is what I'm sure you know your history, Barry. You remember when Kurush conquered Babylon and released the Jews and allowed many of the Jews to settle in Iran? Oh, I forgot that one. But let's say, but nonetheless, you name your kid Mohammed, you're not really a Jew.
Exactly.
At all.
I mean, we have many Jews in America and the West who forget about their heritage. And the Moghaddam, this is a family whose presence in Iran goes back millennia, all the way back to when Kurush conquered Babylon and allowed the Jews to settle there. And the most unsettling part, which really affected the Iranian community, is the fact that this Mohammed Moghaddam, the hostage taker, he was the only one who was killed there. He is a relative of Sepahbod Moghaddam.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
By speaking to people who had served in the Imperial Iranian military directly. The night that shootout happened, I was on the phone with many of these veterans, and the first thing we would say once we were talking on the phone was this Mohammed Moghaddam related to Sepahbod Moghaddam from Savak? And the majority of them said,
and what
yes.
is savak? Hold on. We have to go slowly here. We really do. What is savak?
Well, savak was basically the Iranian secret police, which was created in 1953 by Norman Schwarzkopf Sr. and Mohammed Reza Shah. It was initially proposed by Mossadegh 2 years ago, but rejected. When Schwarzkopf had found out about this, he revived the idea to Mohammed Reza Shah for creating this organization to protect internal security. But instead of protecting internal security, Savak turned out to be a source of internal instability. Because all four chiefs, not exactly all four, only out of the four chief commanders of Savak, 3 of them used their position maliciously, including Moghaddam.
Okay, I have no doubt of that. The Shah was overthrown because of its tyranny, supposedly, but neither here nor there. Once again, their family practiced Shiite Islam, as far as I know.
Well, until 1979, when Khomeini had whatever Moghaddams were remaining in Iran executed, they were openly Jewish. I mean, this Sepahbod Moghaddam, who commanded Savak, had dual Iranian and Israeli citizenship. And when he was appointed head of Savak in early 1978, one of the things that Khomeini supporters would say was, look, the Shah is a puppet of Israel, And at first, people didn't believe it, but once Moghaddam was given that position, his command position gave substance to those lies.
Well, first of all, he was the Sepahbod. That's his name, by the way. It's not a name.
No, Sepahbod. That is a military title. It's the American equivalent of a 3-star general.
All righty. We have to do this, you know. These are not easy terms for anybody, me included. All right. I mean,
people forget that the military ranks of America, Britain, most of the West, even Russia and Israel, they're based on the Iranian system created by Shah Abbas 4 centuries ago, and this was like the final evolution of the officer rank system.
Okay, that being the case, the last of the Shah's military generals, you're claiming was Jewish, and I married into an Iranian Jewish family. Their name was Rahmani, actually. I don't recall any Moghaddams.
Well, there are a lot of Moghaddams out there. As a matter of fact, when I was on the editorial staff for Persian Mirror, one of my other editorial board members, her last name was Moghaddam, and she was Jewish. And there's quite a few of them in New York actually.
No kidding. All right. Again, are we talking coincidence? Maybe it's like Smith.
I mean, it's not necessarily a coincidence here. I mean, the odds. What's interesting is one thing people forget, that all Khomeini really did was when he took power was he only got rid of those at the top, partly because a few months later when Saddam Hussein invaded, he realized that if he completely went after everyone he had an issue with, he would not be able to defend Iran. And many of those in Iran's military and government who escaped, we have simply continued our activities regardless of where we're at.
Now, again, Khomeini was in Paris. If I'm not mistaken, he had ulterior control as well. It was a mess, if I recall. The Shah went to New York and died in Egypt, and Khomeini was in Paris, and they shipped him to Iran. It was a first-class mess, no?
And one of the reasons it was a mess was because of Moghaddam's incompetence. I mean, when Moghaddam was in charge of Savak, he made 3 major mistakes. Not just, and I'm not talking about him accepting the position as Savak commander. I'm talking about 2 of the things that he did in November of 1978 and what he did in December of 1978, which essentially gutted Iran against Mohammed Reza Shah.
Okay, once again, on purpose?
Well, this is a very good question, because here are the 3 things. The first 2 things were that he did in November. First, he told Mohammed Reza Shah, I want you to do something spectacular to regain the confidence of the Iranian population. And Moghaddam suggested that Mohammed Reza Shah make a big public address. Now this was Mohammed Reza Shah's famous "I've heard your voice" of your revolution speech, and this didn't help the revolutionaries reconcile with Mohammed Reza Shah. It only just made him look weak. The second mistake that he did around the same time was he encouraged Mohammed Reza Shah not to allow Arteshbot Oveissi, who was a relative of mine, and at the time the commander of the...
Let's not go too far. You're not claiming that you were in line for the Iranian press?
I'm not claiming. You're forgetting, my father's family are Gilanshahi, as are the Oveissis.
We don't know this stuff. You have to understand. My listeners, now I'm not saying, they're poorly informed. This isn't something we all know about. So let's go back. One name at a time.
All right, Barry. Your listeners can check out the details on my website as well as on my other sites on Facebook, Twitter, which they could easily find, which I'll give during the break.
Yes.
And one thing, and I've also been in contact with the Zahidis, especially after what happened to Mohammed Reza Shah's twin sister this past January. and
All
they
right,
are
one thing
relative.
at a time. We don't know the Zaghadis, and we don't know about the twin sister. One at a time. What happened to the sister? Who were the Zaghadis?
As you what happened to Mohammed Reza Shah's sister this January 7th of this year? She died in her home in Monte Carlo. It may have been foul play. She was 96 years old, but I'm sure.
That's a long life.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, essentially many imperially Iranians, even just regular Iranian citizens in Paris, the French protective systems are not that great. So there may have been foul play involved.
They protected Khomeini.
Yeah, as it turned out, and they protected him for the wrong reasons. But you look at what happened in 1991 when the last Iranian prime minister, Shapour Bakhtiar, and the third mistake Moghaddam made was encouraging Mohammed Reza Shah.
Shapour Bakhtiar, who was he?
Well, he was a Bakhtiari aristocrat who was a big dissident of Mohammed Reza Shah. Essentially, he was somebody. His cousin was the first chief of savak, Teymour Bakhtiar, who not only intrigued for the Iranian throne, he did so with the assistance of John F. Kennedy.
I'm not sure of the significance. Is that good or bad?
It's a very bad thing because Mohammed Reza Shah did not want Bakhtiar at that position because he was afraid that Bakhtiar would weaken things in order to secure the throne of Iran for himself.
So this was in opposition to the Shah that he appointed a new first of all, commander of the Shabak or the actual prime minister?
The actual prime minister. It was that savak commander Moghaddam, the one related to the person who did the hostage situation in Amarillo, who encouraged the Shah to appoint Bakhtiar as prime minister. And Bakhtiar, not only did he abolish savak, he did such a poor job running the government, including the military, it made Khomeini's work much easier.
Well, he certainly died at a pretty young age, and a lot of people think Kissinger pushed him along.
Well, Kissinger did help Mohammed Reza Shah when he get into New York with the essential medical treatment.
Yeah, pushed him along to his end.
Yeah, but what happened in Egypt to Mohammed Reza Shah? After what I hope you got the link that I sent on Facebook. Essentially, it was medical.
I've got it all, and you think it made things easier? I'm doing remember, I keep my audience in mind. This is very confusing for them. All right? Now, what you said about Kissinger and the New York trip and the sudden flight to the medical center of the world, Egypt, and his death at 63, it was a bit confusing, to put it mildly. Well,
the thing is, what happened in New York, Kissinger and Rockefeller did help Mohammed Reza Shah get the essential medical treatment. But once in Egypt, the operation that Dr. Debeki performed on Mohammed Reza Shah essentially ended his life. And if one wants to question Dr. Debeki committing medical murder, he performed a similar operation a few years before on Edward VIII of England, which essentially shortened Edward VIII's lifespan.
Now that's confusing, but let's just say that the Shah was flown from New York to Egypt, which is not, it's not known as a better medical center than New York. All right? Let's put it mildly, where he died.
The only reason that he went to Egypt was, one, to help to better organize resistance against Khomeini, and two, his situation was not very safe against conventional assassinations. And Anwar Sadat, who was in charge of Egypt at the time, he at least had the means to protect Mohammed Reza Shah, and that was the reason why Mohammed Reza Shah went to Egypt. Sadat simply just had all the medical equipment that was required brought in. The one mistake being allowing Dr. Debeki to be brought in.
Wait just 1 second. Remember, audience, names they've never heard before. All right. What? Who was Dr. DeBakey? And once again, why would a simple operation, do it in New York? Why go to Egypt? Okay, you told me because Sadat was going to somehow get the Shah back in power, right?
Exactly. That was the plan.
Okay. That's what they told you the plan was, but okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Now, in other words, but by the way, folks, we are going to transfer this back to Amarillo, but listen, Peter has still not convinced me that the family name is a coincidence or not. All right, you still haven't done that. I mean, he killed a Walmart worker. What kind of a protest is that?
Well, he didn't kill anyone because he didn't actually fire the gun. And as I said, you have all these imperial Iranian military veterans all stating that this man who did the hostage takeover in Walmart is related to the same man who was the last savak commander in Iran. I mean, this wasn't just another Iranian who was just angry at the way he was being treated and flipped out. This was somebody who had motives more than just anti-discrimination.
Like what?
Well, for one, the guy. You look at the age of the guy. Look at where he was at, and look at the timing of what was going on.
All right.
I mean, if this was somebody who was angry at being mistreated because he was Iranian, he would have done this shooting a long time ago.
Well, he held a bunch of people hostage at gunpoint. Yes.
And he did it in the last place you want to do it, Texas.
Or Walmart, for that matter. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, you hold somebody hostage in Texas, you're not going to walk away alive.
Well, you're saying he was a provocateur with an agenda. What would the agenda be?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, this is a man who clearly wanted to incite violence for one reason or another. And to understand the reason, what kind of violence you would want to understand, you have to understand his family background. I mean, this wasn't an Iranian who pledged loyalty to Khomeini or someone who pledged loyalty to ISIS like we saw in Orlando. This was someone with connection with a background, specifically Imperial Iranian Armed Forces background.
And he hit just at the moment. And don't forget Los Angeles, where the guy overstayed his visa by a year to learn how to shoot homos. I mean, really, let's go through the whole lot of them. I actually view this as probably just too much all at once. You know what I mean?
And another thing that's been going on is that you've had a lot of Iranians in America, especially this year, and particularly high-profile Iranians who have been targeted for harassment in one form or another, and it's been making their lives miserable.
And you think that's why he held up Amarillo?
I think that's one reason. He probably wanted to make an attack on American soil, not so much as a lone wolf Islamic terrorist, but as a lone wolf with someone. And the agenda we don't know because he's dead. I mean, he was stupid enough to do a hostage situation in Texas where he knew he was not going to get away alive, and they wouldn't even give him he didn't even have any means to communicate his agenda.
Well, I thought he'd get something out of it, I hope. I hope there was a mission involved here.
And the question is, the background, as I said, is important. He was Iranian, and he was Jewish. Now, was he doing
No, he wasn't. You don't name your kid Muhammad if you're a Jew. You don't do it. At all.
Unless you're a very bad Jew.
Well, that would do it. You'd have to, next to Muhammad, you would call him Christ, and there you go. No more Jew.
Exactly. I mean, you look at many of the Jews who are in the West, and particularly America. I mean, they're not very in touch with their heritage.
No, that's for sure. But there's lots and lots of reasons for that. But what you're talking about is an Amarillo Walmart holdup. What he held, like a half dozen workers at gunpoint?
Yeah. He basically just held whatever workers at gunpoint he could. Somebody sounded an alarm, and the Amarillo police came in SWAT style and killed him.
Without thinking about the hostages, weren't they in any danger?
Well, we're talking Texas here. I mean, Texas, they're very trigger happy down there. Shoot first, ask questions later. That's Texas law enforcement when it comes to most hostage situations.
I'm never going to work at Walmart in Austin. You've convinced me. All right, so you've got yourself a situation where somehow this is connected back to Iran and the Shah, and somehow it's connected back to, a whole generation backwards. How?
Well, as I said, he's related to the last savak commander, and the majority of Imperial Iranian veterans who are in Iran and abroad have they've confirmed he is related to the last savak commander. And one thing people need to realize about the Imperial Iranian community, I mean, they're essentially split into two factions. There's one that's working with the Iranian military and government to defend Iran, as acting as a subversive force, and there's the ones outside of Iran who are split on what kind of action to take.
Oh, and now this gets okay. This is starting to turn more likely. So you're saying he was working for this splintered force? Which force? I would think the Shah.
Exactly, but because people need to realize when it comes to the Iranian community abroad who are royalists, they are very split into different factions who can't decide which is the best course of action to take. And this Mohammed Moghaddam, who just got killed in Amarillo, he was part of one of those factions. And one thing people need to realize about these factions is that the majority of these Iranians, many of them are either old and unable to take any action, but they do have many family members abroad and quite a few followers. And these people, they're very hard to detect. If they're going to make an attack, there's not going to be any warning of what kind of action is going to be done. I mean, if you saw what I did in New York this past September, you'll have a good idea.
Hold on. We didn't see what you did in New York. All right, one incident at a time. That'll be for the next half hour. I have no idea what you did in New York. By the way, you sent me things that, how do I put this? They're going to be hard for people to swallow. All right,
there's been a lot going on out here. As you can tell over the past few months, it's one of those things where you have a few days where nothing's going on, and then all of a sudden the shit hits the fan all at once, and it's overwhelming.
Okay, that'll be for the next half hour. We have to take a little break where you'll plug yourself and I'll plug me, and then we'll go to New York, and then there's all kinds of things that are a little offbeat, like... you know what? I'm not going to bring them up yet. It's not worth it. I still have a lot of problem with this Bakhtiar being Jewish. Mohammed.
Now this is Moghaddam.
Moghaddam. Yes,
Bakhtiar
I know. It's the general. Okay, I got it. The point is, if he did it, he didn't do it as a Jew.
Yeah, he was a very bad Jew who did it for an imperial splinter group.
Well, he was a Muslim who did it for a splinter group.
He certainly wasn't a Muslim, that's for sure.
Well, you know what? We have to take a short break, and then we'll go back to this. Yeah, we're doing all right. I think we're doing okay. This is a very complicated subject, and your reality is very different than other people's in my audience, all right? Just so you know that, okay? We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Hey folks, we've got an unusual show, and I think this guy is pretty knowledgeable, but not of stuff we know. He's knowledgeable about Iran, and he's seeing it from the inside, I believe accurately, but we're gonna stumble pretty soon, I think. But nonetheless, all my books are available at lulu.com. That's www.lulu.com. There's a little search box right in my last name, Chamish. CHAMISH. My website is barrychamish.com. All right, Peter, give yours.
Well, you can go, all you have to do is type in www.peter, P-E-T-E-R-I-I as in Roman numeral 2, Khan, K-H-A-N-E, Mazendran, M-A-Z-E-N-D-A-R-A-N, .webley.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter. Just type in Peter II, Khan Mazendran. You can see everything there from the recent event I just attended in Groton celebrating the centennial of submarines in America to the videos and pictures of that incident in September I just mentioned where I kicked Iranian President Rouhani out of New York with a protest rally I had right at the embassy.
All right, one thing at a time. First of all, if you don't mind, spell your last name one last time. Peter Khan Zendran.
Zendran, that's the last name, Zendran.
Perfect.
But if you can, that's how you can find my books. If you want to find me online, you can also find me under the title, which this is a title that my family's had for centuries. You can find it on my Facebook and Twitter. My name, you can find it for MySpace and a few other sites, as well as Google+.
All right, folks, we are archived for a week at www.libertyarchives.com if you missed that, okay? All right, we'll do New York first. Now, I didn't hear about the incident when you threw the Iranian prime minister out of New York.
Prime minister. This was President Rouhani, and this was around the same time you had Pope Francis, Putin, and all these other international heavyweights come to the UN for the annual General Assembly meeting.
And once again, he actually left New York because of something you did?
Exactly. You can see everything there in real time on my Facebook and Twitter, as well as on my MySpace. I have the pictures and videos uploaded there.
All right, you protested him. I sort of missed that. I'm sorry. But, all right, you threw him out of New York. Why? Didn't you want him in New York?
Well, no. I mean, I've been opposed to Rouhani ever since he became president. He's been little more than an American Western elitist puppet who's been ruining Iran. And in 2013 and 14, I had protests there, and I had attempts to shut down my protests. They failed. But each time I would have a protest, it was always Rajavi's Mujahideen organization that would have people show up there. So this time, I decided to do things differently, held a protest at the Iranian embassy instead of over at the UN. That way, I would be able to thwart Rajavi's supporters, many of whom in America are just royalists who aren't very smart and are just not sure what action to take. But this time in 2015, I had quite a few students show up and a few others, not just Iranians, but also people on the street who are very familiar with Iran, especially in New York. People don't realize. I mean, Iranians
you're
have
saying
not just,
that Iran today is pro-American?
I mean,
they
not
did
so much,
cut a deal with them. They cut a silly nuclear deal that is going to backfire. But other than that, how are they?
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, the nuclear deal is not good. But one thing people don't realize, Iranians have been a part of New York society and the whole culture down there in the region for a lot longer than the 1960s and 70s. We've been there for a very long time. It's just until recently, people have not been paying attention.
Okay. I'm a little confused. Is that good or bad?
Well,
you
in my case,
protested Iran, so I guess it's not good.
Well, in a way, for the royalist movement, it is good. I mean, it was my father's family, who helped Mohammed Reza Shah's family get settled into that region.
All right, we now have your loyalties. It took a while, it really did. Pardon my ignorance, but you're royalists. You want the old way.
Not so much the policies back. I mean, essentially, with the situation in Iran, you have so many of the royal families who are I mean, these are the families before 1925, before the Qajars. You have, as far as the royalist factions, you have Gilanshahi families like mine, which are all competing for power. Then you have the other dynasties, which are the Qajars, the Zands, the Afshars, and you also have the tribal factions like the Bakhtiaris and the Kurds all competing for supremacy. I mean, that is essentially what Iran's royalist movement is.
And it's gone, no?
No, we're still around. I mean, that protest I did in New York City, where me and several students got a picket at the embassy. And I made that video message. You can see the video message I make, me yelling to President Rouhani in Farsi, "Come out and get your ass kicked." I sent him that video message as he was speaking at the UN. He clearly checked that message once he got done speaking, and right after
you were at the
that,
UN.
I was at the embassy. He was at the UN.
Okay, folks. You know what? Give it one more try. How do people see this video?
Well, I have it uploaded on my YouTube page as well as on my Facebook, and there's a link on my Twitter page.
All right. I think one more time you should spell Peter Khan Zendran.
Yep. The last name is spelled Zendran. If you go into YouTube and type that in, you'll see that video. It's gotten over 1,000 hits. Same thing with the Facebook video, which is on the page under my title, Peter I, Roman numeral 2, Khan E, Mazandaran, Mazendaran. You'll see that video. It's gotten over 1,000 hits there, too. It's gotten a lot of shares over there, which shows not only was it successful, but at least Rouhani is not, and the Iranian government, at least the faction he's a part of, is not very strong. And that any proper action can succeed.
My webpage gets 800 a week. It's not that.
Well, you're a big media personality, Barry. I'm not.
Oh no, we'll be after tonight. Let me tell you. I mean, what do you mean Iranians have been taking it hard before Ramadan? How?
Well, for one, when you've had a lot of high-profile Iranians not only getting hacked, but there's been also a lot of racist messages. These are This isn't just stuff going around privately. Some of it is high-profile messages being targeted at the Iranian community on Ramadan, and some like the one you'll see on my website where basically someone came up with this new sex product, an inflatable goat, which is advertised as a Ramadan gift for Iranians, which is being sold on Amazon. I mean, someone sent that to me on Twitter. Needless to say, I was not very happy with that person. Then they tried saying it was a joke. I sent that around. I mean, one, that was not very popular, and two, the start of Ramadan this year coincided with the anniversary of Princess Layla of Iran, who I was engaged to.
You were engaged to her? All right,
yeah,
folks.
Remember I was on your show 2 years ago.
Yes, a couple of years ago. It's not like these names. Look, things roll off my back and stuff like that. All right, first things first. One, you've got a troublemaker. You're saying from Austria, which makes perfect sense as far as I'm concerned, but neither here nor there. One troublemaker is what you're worried about?
Well, you don't forget when you have like that one troublemaker from Austria. I mean, essentially, this was some Aryan supremacist dominatrix. I mean, this is a woman who holds. If somebody's Jewish, she'll take them to Auschwitz and do her sessions with them there.
You've seen that?
She's posted pictures of this online of her doing slave sessions with Jewish men at Auschwitz. This is a woman who'll strip naked and force Muslim men to walk on a chain leash.
Is there someone to complain to?
Oh, this is someone definitely to complain about.
All right.
Especially when they've got a big following.
Is there someone to complain to?
About this. I mean, I wouldn't know who to complain about this.
That's what I'm saying. So you're saying this goes on unobstructed? Exactly.
I mean, you look at this here. I mean, it's not just in America with Trump followers that this kind of stuff is popular with. I mean,
well, that makes sense. He's a lunatic.
Exactly. Not just a lunatic, a dangerous one. I mean, doing stuff like that at Auschwitz.
So that makes perfect sense. You're allowed both of them. Listen, this is no democracy. You're not getting a free choice here. You're getting crappy from no good. I mean, it's really well, that's my opinion. I think it's not only mine, but that's my opinion. But nonetheless, you're talking about one woman. All right. There's no one to complain to. There's more?
Well, if you tell, as I said, the start of Ramadan this year coincided with the anniversary of the murder of Princess Layla. I mean, her father, Mohammed...
Ramadan, Shia Ramadan is different date than Sunni Ramadan, right?
It's not so much a different date, but also different practices. I mean,
so she was targeting this at Shia Muslims.
It's not so much Shia Muslims, but Iranian Muslims.
Okay, gotcha. So somebody really didn't like Iranians.
Exactly, and the sick thing was this was someone advertising themselves as an Aryan supremacist, and people from Iran are the original Aryans. So this shows this person clearly isn't playing with too full a deck here.
Well, that's kind of a definition problem, but okay. Fair enough. You got hacked. All right. I'm sorry to hear that. Now, if you want, you can talk about... You talked about this 2 years ago, and it didn't soak in really well. Who was Princess Leia? Let's go through this whole thing.
Well, one reason why it's important for Ramadan, her father, may not sound that important, him being the Mohammed Reza Shah, the deposed Shah of Iran. He was her youngest daughter with Faradiba. Now, with Faradiba, not only is she still alive, but she's a Sayyid, which essentially means she is a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. And you have a lot of Muslims, not just Iranians.
That's Layla. We're talking about Layla here. Your ex.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And her mother is just as important because her mother is a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. And her being murdered in London by a Dr. Klein, who may or may not... I mean, this doctor, in all probability, he might not have been Jewish. I mean, like, one thing I recall down in Ghana...
Okay. What was the motive for murder?
Well, that's something that's still trying to be determined, but it happened in London during the royal birthday celebrations, and the British royal family has essentially been trying to snuff out all Iranian royal opposition, no matter what their bloodline is.
Now, this is a little... All right, once again... do people know this? You're saying that the British royal family murdered Princess Leela using their Dr. Klein?
In all probability, that is what happened, because you look at what happened. It was reported as a murder, then they tried to cover it up as suicide, but when the facts started becoming known, more people are saying it's a murder. It's just the British government and law enforcement has not officially reversed their decision to call it a murder.
What did they say she died of?
Well, first they said it was a murder, then they said it was suicide. But this was a woman who was found megadosed on tranquilizers with a phone cord wrapped around her neck, and which strangled her.
This was actually, witnessed?
Yeah, this was all over the news in June of 2001, and this murder happened exactly 3 months before 9/11.
Why would that be important?
Well, after 9/11, a murder like this, her murder essentially got forgotten by the world community.
3 months is plenty of time. If in fact she had a phone around her neck and she was megadosed, I would think somebody would notice.
Well, people have noticed, just not the general world population, and that's one reason why many of us have not only been vocal in getting the truth out, but you've had a lot of acts of violence occur on the anniversary of her birth and on the anniversary of her murder.
What violence? Okay, once again, people in my audience, you didn't know there was violence on the birthday and the death day of Princess Leila. What violence?
Well, this year, I mean, I've seen quite a bit of violence. I mean, this year on the anniversary of her birth, I ended up doing 30 days in jail. I mean, I remember that. I mean, this year, now basically, I ended up punching out some troublemakers in Middletown, Rhode Island, which is next to Newport. This was days after I got treated for a serious infection.
I know, one thing at a time. I don't want to just jump into this. There are plenty of problems with this story. Plenty of them. Now, I'm going to get to this. Okay, give me half a second here. In the next half hour, I'm going to give you the first half hour. You can do this story. I'm telling you, this one, just leave it be. I know Jews, and I don't know Connecticut necessarily, but this story...
Well, the Middletown I mentioned is in Rhode Island.
Oh, Rhode Island, I'm sorry. New England. The point is, I'll leave this to the next half hour. This is a tough one. I'm telling you, it's for your own good. My audience are not going to dive into this that quickly. I'm going to say this again about Princess Leila. If she was in fact strangled, and if she was megadosed, I would think the police would figure it out.
But don't forget, in Britain, the police are loyal to the Crown, and if the Crown tells them to do something, which goes to get, in other words, if the British Crown tells them to say that somebody that they wanted dead was committed suicide, even if the investigating officers on the scene know that it was a murder, they will either do their job or face serious consequences, as we've seen what happened with Diana.
Well, Diana was truly murdered. You know, if you want to go into a weird car crash that didn't make sense and the motive behind it. But Leila, frankly, if she was really strangled, all right, what the heck? It's your claim. Folks, if you want to check it out, is there a way to check it out?
Well, you can. Well, I've got plenty of the evidence regarding her murder put up on my site, and all you have to do is just do a Google search, Princess Leila, spelled Leila. I mean, there's one major problem, which is why me and many people have been getting vocal about this, is that whenever someone does a web search for her name, the Star Wars character Princess Leia comes up, and this has been a real major problem for her.
If you watch Star Wars, there is a Princess Leia. She was actually a half-Jewish lady named Fisher.
Yes.
Well, so that would be the more popular first choice.
And the problem is because of websites redirecting from Leila to Leia, it makes doing a proper web search very difficult, and which is why me and other people have to work extra hard to put the truth out, even hacking some of the news sites which have the first-hand evidence.
All right, and I tell you, I would just write Princess Leia of Iran, and that should take care of most of the hacks. But all right, that's what you're claiming. You were engaged to her, and you were engaged to her, right?
Yes, I was.
She went and killed somebody went and killed your
somebody. Yes, Dr. Lewis. Dr. Louis Klein. I mean, this really damning part is her mother, Empress Farah. She describes in her own autobiography what happened that day, because essentially Leila told Farah she did not want to see her. When Farah told
hold on, start again. Who did she leave?
Now, this is on the last day of her life. Essentially, yes. her mom had called ahead in London, where Leila was staying at the Hotel Leonard. Leila told her mother, Farah, she did not want to speak with her that night. And so Farah decided to call up a doctor and have a well-being check done on her. And the odd part about this well-being check was that Farah and the doctor both arrived at the Hotel Leonard around the same time. When the time elapsed between when that doctor left the hotel lobby to do his well-being check until the time he reported her murder was 15 minutes. Now, if this doctor walked into her hotel room, opened the door, and found a woman trying to commit suicide or a woman who had been murdered, he would have reported it right away. Now, it taking 15 minutes at least shows that there would have been some struggle in an attempt to kill her.
All right, folks, just so you know, Iran did go down very weirdly, and I recall that being a distant witness. It's not totally impossible that he lost his bride-to-be to a Dr. Klein in London, because she called to have her health checked?
It was her mother who called to have a well-being check. It was Empress Farah. I mean, I'm sure you and your listeners are familiar with what a medical well-being check by a doctor or a policeman.
I think they can imagine that. I think they can't imagine strangling after overdosing on sedatives. I mean, that's quite a suicide.
I mean, and the thing is, she was found with the phone cord wrapped around her neck. A person who is in normal health would not be able to commit suicide with a phone cord wrapped around their neck. It simply would not have the tensile strength to sever the windpipe or any of the vital parts of the neck.
All right. First of all, I want you to know I'm doing much better with you than you realize. All right? Mm-hmm. And as for my listeners, you go to that website or Twitter site and you go look at his report on the death of his bride-to-be. Layla. All right. Now look, I'm gonna introduce the next half hour. We're gonna end next hour. I'm sorry. First half hour I'm gonna give to you, and the last half hour I'm about to write another murder. This was of a Yemenite singer, Oveissei. She was murdered in Israel by, Nobel Peace Prize winner Shimon Peres. And if that sounds fantastic, I did really good research, and I really did go to her family, and I really found out she was butchered by the person who became Israel's president, and things get very, very hairy in Israel. And boy, I didn't expect that. But they came to me, the Yemenites, the Sephardim, everyone who was, they were sold. They were sold as guinea pigs in hundreds, 115,000 Sephardim, 4,500 Yemenite were used in experiments. And if that sounds fantastic, listen to the last half hour of my show about Oveissei. I went deep. They came to me because I found out about Rabin. I was the only one to find out about the atrocities going on. They thought I was special. They came to me. But the stuff I discovered, I didn't want to discover this. I really didn't. So that's what's coming up in the last half hour. The next half hour, we are going to continue once again with Peter Khan Zendran. That's a hard name, by the way, to remember. And one more time in the next half hour, you'll give an update on it. And then we'll check out. I hope what you're saying has relevance. I truly do, because this is very powerful accusations you're making. And I'm hoping for the best here. Folks, first half hour is Peter, last half hour is me and the Yemenites and Oveissei and what they did to Israel's favorite singer. Boy, you're going to find out something before I write it. Folks, we take a few minutes, 7 minutes. I'll see you right back. Bye all.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Well, folks, we've got quite the show tonight, really. And, well, I've got a good half hour of stuff that you're not going to find so acceptable. And Peter, I warned you, my listeners are going to have trouble with some of this stuff, all right? You hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in a little foggy right now, but I just had to recharge my phone for a few minutes.
I'll get back to it. The next half hour is going to be iffy to many, if not most of my listeners. And I always keep them in mind, I really do. But I'm going to quote you. Oh, and by the way, I was planning, well, my Cindy didn't show up for tonight's meeting, so I spent my time planning my next writing. Is going to be about the murder of Ofra Haza by the former Prime Minister of Israel, Shimon Peres. There's nasty stuff going on there, nasty, nasty stuff. But let's start with you. I'm quoting you now. Are you ready for me to quote you?
Yes, I am.
My recent troubles are well documented. You might spot how some of the homeless members of the Truro synagogue caused me trouble in Middletown. And by the way, it goes on from here. Well, you said they smelled, which is already Jews don't smell. It's not our way of doing things, okay?
Well, wasn't sure if you're done quoting, but I'm not sure if you've ever dealt with the homeless in Rhode Island. One thing about Middletown and all of Aquidneck Island is that there are plenty of places for anyone, if they're homeless or not, to go take a shower and get cleaned up. But we've had a lot of problems with people who are either from out of town or who have serious psychological problems, who do two things: they panhandle and they don't take proper care of themselves.
Well, you said they're members of the Truro Synagogue, and
that was what was listed on the police report. I did talk with the Middletown cops. Initially they were going to let me go because they've had similar issues with homeless people making this kind of trouble before, essentially instigating trouble. It's just because.
Why would they pick on you?
Well, the whole conflict started was these were two individuals that smelled bad, I just recently got treated in this past March. 2 weeks before that happened, I had to be rushed to Bacchus Hospital. There's something that's been going around the northeastern United States, especially in New England, and they've been getting proper treatment for it in Connecticut, which was where I was treated, but they have not been treating it properly in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. They've had some high-profile deaths because of this, and part of the issue was, usually most cops are wise to that. Especially this is 2016 today. We have biohazards that are going on, and one reason for these biohazards are people who don't take care of themselves, or someone just getting down,
and they have
down with something.
Members of the Truro Synagogue.
That was what was put on the police report. Because I remember when the police stated, because the cop that asked me were they black or white, I told them, look, these people were so
black?
gay I couldn't tell.
Well, they could be Ethiopian. You could be a black Jew. Were they?
Well, they didn't say what they were, but come to find, I do remember back in 2000, I had dealt with Rabbi Mordecai Eskovitz when he was at Toru Synagogue. He did do a lot of homeless outreach. I can remember him dealing with 80-year-old Holocaust survivors who were at Travelers Aid and other shelters up in Providence. You don't forget a Holocaust survivor who's homeless. It's one reason I knew they were real Jews. These were 80-year-old people. Somebody would give them a ham sandwich. They would start screaming and flipping out.
I could see that. They were keeping kosher. They didn't want a ham sandwich. I could see them flipping out.
Yeah, and this is one reason we were able to tell they were real Jews. I remember one incident back in 1999. I was dealing with a crippled Israeli veteran from the 1982 campaign. This is the man who still had shrapnel in his Achilles tendon. He saw another Jewish man eating hot dogs and beans, and he started flipping out on him.
And you're saying that they said they were going to kill you? Why would they want to kill you?
No, they didn't say they were going to kill me. They lied to the police and said I was going to kill them.
Well, this is good. That's a threat. Why would they want to lie to the police that they were going to kill you?
Well, they said, clearly they got scared. And the cops in Middletown, at least in Newport, they do their job. In Middletown, they're not that very sharp.
What were they scared of?
Essentially, they were afraid I was going to beat them up. That's what they were scared of.
And why would they think that?
Well, they got mad because one, they were homeless. They didn't like the fact that I was coughing up because of their odor. But when you've experienced,
excuse me there.
Yeah,
they were mad because you thought they stunk.
Not just thought. I was coughing up there because they were close and the smell was overwhelming.
Okay, this is quite the story. All right, now you actually say that you were taken to the cops because you were in danger.
I wasn't taken to the cops not because I was in danger. Simply, they called the cops on me because they thought that I was going to kill them.
That's what I said the first time around. All
They
right.
were the ones. They called the cops on me, not the other way around. And the really insulting part was I had my discharge papers from Bacchus Hospital clearly stating that I was recently treated for an infection, which if I hadn't been treated for it in time could have been fatal.
And once again, why is that relevant?
Well, for one, it was relevant because if a policewoman were to see that, if they would have seen that, if they would have, any cop with a brain would have, if they had seen a document like that and checked my ID, verified that I was that person, they would have realized I was not acting in a way to kill these people. I was acting in self-defense.
Well, self-defense? Okay, first of all, what did the police say? How did they react to the accusations against you?
Well, they automatically took the side of those people, just handcuffed me, brought me to jail, brought me to court the next morning.
You were in jail overnight from these threats?
Yeah, from these weirdos who thought I was going to kill them.
Oh, well, it sounds like they weren't in jail and you were. It doesn't sound exactly positive on your side.
Exactly. Essentially, that's how fucked up the judicial system in Rhode Island is. If this had happened in Mass or even in Mass up in Boston, I would not have had to spend a night in jail. The cops. I've had to check into the hospital a few times in the past few years, as well as in New York and Connecticut. Usually once a cop sees that you have a medical condition and you're having a confrontation with someone, once they see hard medical paperwork, they'll bring you to the hospital instead of to prison. That's not how they roll in Rhode Island.
Well, you were over your condition. There was no real reason to. Was there?
That was the thing. There was something serious going around in the Northeast, and you'll notice in that same email that I sent you, one mysterious death I forgot to mention was they had the death of Cool Moose Bob Healy. He was a politician who was very popular, run for governor as an independent candidate, was getting a very large sum of the votes and was the favorite to win in the next election. And we also had
what happened?
He died under mysterious circumstances.
Well, how mysterious?
Well, essentially, he told his girlfriend who lived next door to him that he just needed to lay down and went to bed. The next morning, she didn't hear from him. She went to go check on him and found that he was dead. Now,
I think that happens. I think the phone cord and the over-medication is way more suspicious than this. Now, get ready for this, folks. All right? There's a new disease around that even killed Jewish peace activist Dave Zakon. That's your quote. I don't know who Dave Zakon is, but what was the virus that killed him?
Well, this is something similar to what killed Cool Moose Healy, and which I had to be treated with. Essentially, there had been something going around southern New England and the northeastern United States, and the thing is, doctors in Connecticut were able to treat it properly because they practiced proper hygiene. Dave Zakon, I know you're probably not too familiar with the Jewish peace groups up in the greater Boston area, but
I probably have missed them. But I don't believe they were diseased. They might have been in their heads, but I'm not sure about anywhere else.
Just Dave Zakon. I've only met him a few times. It's just this is someone if you meet him once, and you don't forget him. And one reason, when I first met him, this was at a peace group meeting, and someone brought up the issue of.
Why were you at a peace group meeting?
Yeah, because I've been involved with some of these different peace organizations, and if it's an organization that I'm not familiar with, like this one, I'll at least go there once to find out what it's like. And at that meeting, someone started discussing J Street, and as soon as they mentioned, I told them I don't want to hear anything about J Street. I've had nothing but bad problems with them. A few seconds later, somebody just extends their hand to me for me to shake their hand. I shook their hand. They introduced themselves as a member of J Street. This person turned out to be Dave Zakon, who I just mentioned. And we got into it. He asked me, well, what my issues with J Street were. Then I told him about how I had some bad dealings with J Street right around the same time. I had the legal issues with Brown University, specifically the J Street organization in Rhode Island was founded by Nina Tannenwald, who I knew from the Watson Institute, who is, I should say, who at the very least is a Jewish woman who is not all there mentally.
Well, my family came from that, not all there mentally. There's a side of Judaism, she probably was, but her reality was twisted by all kinds of facts. But nonetheless, what's this got to do with killing the peace activists with a disease?
Well, here's the thing. The one thing about this disease that's been going around is not so much killing someone intentionally, but from lack of proper medical treatment. Because the way they treat diseases in Rhode Island and Massachusetts is very different from the way they treat it in most of America.
How do they treat it?
Well, for one, many of the hospitals, specifically in Boston and Providence, do not practice proper medical hygiene, specifically sterilization procedures. And many people end up...
Again, do people know this?
Well, some people know this, and not a lot of people know this. But once you compare what happens in these medical facilities in the regions I just mentioned, specifically, you'll have someone in Boston go in to check in for one problem, then check out with another, or it's something that can easily be treated and they end up dying from it. I mean, part of the reason is you have a lot of young and dumb people who don't understand the value of proper hygiene.
I'm not sure that disease has spread through New England. Why would somebody let a doctor touch them without gloves? Really, what is proper hygiene?
Well, for those who aren't familiar with medical procedures, I'm sure you're familiar anyone who's even watched a doctor show, they see the doctors do the scrub downs, put the gloves on, put the scrubs on. Not only just that, but also the security at many of these hospitals is so lax. They'll let anyone in to see anyone.
I think they have to.
Not necessarily. One of the reasons with the pandemics that have been going around, you have to
By the way, when was
careful.
There a pandemic? America's been all the way back to tuberculosis or polio or something way back in the 50s. There was a pandemic.
I'm not so much America, but also the world. You have let me see. We've had Ebola, swine flu, SARS, all these other.
They weren't exactly pandemic in New England, but all right. You're saying that doctors would get an Ebola patient and not scrub up?
Not so much get a patient, but also a visitor who had been in an area where that disease was prominent, and let that person come in without finding out if that person had something.
Okay, I'm going to go to your next point. Listeners, we have another one coming up. We have a couple more coming up, all right? All right, your quote. Blocking Arteshbot Oveissi, okay, my Gilanshahi's cousin, who had plans of making a Gilanshahi restoration from heading the military government on November 5th, 78, and blocking Azhari, who had heart problems, hastened Khomeinei, where Oveissei could have crushed opposition. That's a mouthful. What do you mean by this?
Well, that was what I talked about in the first half hour of the show, specifically Arteshbot Oveissi. He was the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Iranian Army. Like me, he was Gilanshahi. Most of the imperial military and government wanted him to head up the military government that Mohammed Reza Shah was forming because of the way Khomeinei's followers were acting. Moghaddam, the head of SAVAK, who I mentioned earlier, blocked that and suggested that Mohammed Reza Shah appoint Azhari. This was an Iranian Arteshbot, which is the equivalent of a 4-star general. He appointed this fourth star
And
had
where
hard.
did that weaken the face? Again,
Well,
where do you fit in this?
well,
Which
well,
family are you?
As I said, I'm Gilanshahi, which there are many different branches of.
Okay.
I mean, the Gilanshahi. Being Gilanshahi is like being part of the royal families of Europe. It's all several different families, but with one major origin.
Okay, and which would have been good for your origin?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, right now, all these families are competing for supremacy, and anyone that happens to be in power, I mean, being a Gilanshahi is like a form of social security. I mean, we may be from different branches, but we all treat each other like family. And
so
one reason
would be good for you?
It would be
This
good,
would
and
work out?
it would. And one reason it would have been good for Iran was this Oveissei, who was in charge of the imperial military. If he had become military commander, he had openly stated he was going to have Khomeini and all his leadership executed, and that would have stopped Iran's revolution.
Well, that would have scared the hell out of a good chunk of Iran as well, but okay. I think I see your solution. I don't know if it's a good solution, but I see a solution. All right, let's go. And folks, I apologize again if you missed that. We are archived for a week at www.libertyarchives.com. And you know what? You have a last chance to plug yourself. Peter, plug yourself.
Well, I'm going to give one little shortcut because, as I said just a few hours ago, I was at a Groton submarine centennial. This is essentially they've been celebrating 100 years of the U.S. submarine service, which started in Connecticut. If you're on Facebook or Twitter, just type in the hashtag submarine proud and you'll see me. Other than that, you can just if you want to, you can find my YouTube. Type in my name, Peter Khan Zendran. You'll even find a few Ofra Haza videos under my favorites list. But if you want to find me on Facebook or Twitter, it's Peter.
That's actually relevant. And my next half hour, look, I did some research. I didn't know how I got into it, okay? They found me. But we'll talk about Ofra Haza, and we'll mention, folks, you get to libertyarchives.com, and somewhere there's Ofra Haza videos on this, I believe, website? Twitter?
Yeah, I've got, on the favorite section of my YouTube page, you'll find a couple videos there of Ofra Haza.
Perfect. All right, let's do... Oh, you know what? I'm going to plug me last time before it ends. Folks, all my books are at lulu.com. That's www.lulu.com. Look in the right-hand corner. There's a search box right in Chamish, my last name. Chamish. You'll get to my books. And my website is www.barrychamish.com. All right, let's go to the last point. Are you ready for the last point?
Yep.
What about the Israeli and the Algerian navies? What about them?
Well, here's the interesting thing is that the new submarines that they're building for the Israeli Navy and the new frigates these are multi-purpose missile frigates, which are being built for the Algerian Navy. They just completed two of each ship at the same time over in Kiel, Germany.
Well, do they know each other?
Well, not until now. But here's the crazy part. Algeria has been making a massive military buildup to the point where its navy is at least 3 times the size that of Israel's. And this military buildup is one reason why Egypt acquired those 2 Mistrals originally built by Russia and France.
I'm not sure I followed that. I'm really not. How did Egypt come into this?
Well, Algeria is expanding its military so rapidly, including getting mini helicopter carriers from Italy, that Egypt wants to maintain at least some sort of balance. And that's one reason why they got those carriers.
Okay, sort of. I'm not sure that Algeria is so close to Egypt that, provide a threat, but okay.
But here's the interesting thing. I mean, 2 years ago, I was talking with Dr. Hugh Roberts over at Harvard when he made a presentation about the current political military situation in Algeria. And when I mentioned to him about the Algerian naval buildup, even he was surprised, because most Algerian and Muslim scholars, people who, all these talking heads of the media, even these people are alarmed at the spending spree of all the military equipment Algeria is getting from Germany, from China, and Russia. I mean,
and then once again, to get to Egypt, you have to cross over Libya. You know, it's a heck of a march for your army. I guess your Navy could...
But these warships the warships that Algeria require, I mean, look, the way Libya is right now, with what Aisha Gaddafi has been doing, with what ISIS has been doing there, they're not going to make any trouble for Algeria. And even if they were to make trouble for Algeria, Algeria now has the resources to transport their troops by sea for any military conflict.
Not
even
really.
With
A
Israel.
few troops, not a whole army.
But enough to at least put it. I mean, and this is what I said about the Israeli submarine and Algerian frigate being completed at the same time, doing their sea trials at the same time.
I can imagine other enemies of Israel.
But you look at what Egypt's got. I mean, they're only starting to rebuild their military. They don't really have much to pose that big of a threat to Israel, only to just tie down the Israeli military. But if Egypt were to ally with a country like Algeria with the military hardware they have, they could do some serious damage.
There'd be some serious damage done to the Middle East.
Exactly.
All right. Folks, we're just about... oh, my goodness. I'm overwhelmed by this. In the next half hour, we are going to talk... I'm going to be writing about Oveissei. I let it die all those years ago, but I'm not going to anymore. That's coming up in the next half hour. And by the way, next week, I got a phone call. Robert Singer will be my guest. Thank you, Peter. We enjoyed you.
Thanks, Barry.
See you later. Folks, we'll be back. Toda rabah. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Bye, all.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The rapture will be canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Evening, folks. We're back again, and I'm going to go this one alone. I really am. I'm not going to dispute what we heard previously, but I'm going to go this one alone. I did this research. Look, I've explained on my show how I met, well, Uzi Meshulam, Rabbi Uzi Meshulam, and the Jews of Yemen and the kidnappings. If you didn't hear it, maybe, I don't know, maybe Nick, my producer, will return it to you or something. I was dragged into, well, something I didn't expect. All I did was the Rabin murder, but it turns out by getting it publicized, I was kind of a local hero amongst people who also had their causes, but their abuse. Now, Ofra Chaza was a very well-known Israeli filmmaker. In fact, she was the most well-known Israeli songwriter and singer and the work. She was the star of Israel. She put her money from stardom into a movie called Absolute Justice. All right, I'm going to summarize it. This is from an Israeli website. Ofra Chaza decides to investigate the kidnapped Israeli children and even to find her twin brother, who was found missing after his birth. She meets with actor Arnon Sadok, a detective in the homicide department. Well, they solve this complicated murder. Now, that can't be allowed in Israel, and I'll explain why, but the film is called Absolute Justice, and it was not just directed by any schmo, all right? It was directed by Arnon Sadok. He was the last Israeli to be nominated for an Oscar. He, Beyond the Walls, it was called, if you must know. She had herself a major, major hit. But right after the movie came out, they told us she died of AIDS. All right. She was a very modest lady. She didn't die of AIDS. What happened is, after she started making the movie, she was pursued by a suitor named Doron Ashkenazi. Not just pursued, she was hounded. And due to family pressure in the works, she relented and she gave in and she married him. He made her sign a deed to all her property, the works, all assigned to Doron Ashkenazi after she died. He got them briefly, but not for long. All right, I'm going to read from the Jerusalem Post. This explains how she died. Because of her known modesty, combined with the abortion, the public accused Ashkenazi of passing the AIDS virus onto her. He denied it and promised to take an AIDS test and reveal the results to the public. Well, he never had a chance to take the test. Now let me go on. Oh, God. Ofra Chaza's widower dies, drug found. The attorney of the family of singer Ofra Chaza, who died on February of AIDS, said the family awaits the results of an autopsy to be performed on her husband, Doron Ashkenazi, to determine whether he was the AIDS carrier. Ashkenazi was found unconscious on Saturday night in his Herzliya home, 9 p.m. It doesn't matter the details, because he was snuffed out 14 months before Chaza. All right? He never had a chance to take an AIDS test. But look who promised to do the HIV test post-mortem. What? Folks, if you don't know my writing, you don't know who Yehuda is. He's the coroner who falsified the autopsy of Yitzhak Rabin. He was the coroner found counterfeiting DNA tests between a surviving Yemenite child and a biological mother. That mother was, it doesn't matter. She was the Attorney General of Israel. In short, now this is from Haaretz. All right. Here is the quote from the Israeli press. All right. Widower of widow's most successful singer Ofra Chaza, who died of AIDS in February 2000, died Saturday night of an overdose of crystallized cocaine, the police said. We are expecting an answer as to whether Doron was HIV positive and the one who infected Ofra. Attorney Ari Sharabi added. Several complaints were filed with the police accusing Ashkenazi of not informing Chaza that he was AIDS positive. Needless to say, he denied it. Ashkenazi would not. It was the night of the Seder, Pesach, Passover. He didn't celebrate the Seder with his family. He stayed home and died of crystal meth. Look, guys, this truly is not a normal way to die. Not for a Jew, not in Israel. Ashkenazi was rushed to Beilinson Hospital in Petah Tikva after attempts at resuscitation. He was pronounced dead. In short, I'll just read more of the headline. Better Haaretz than me. Ashkenazi family lawyer Shmuel Zung and Ashkenazi was focused on the legal proceeding that were to begin in a few weeks regarding the validity of Chaza's will, a copy of which could not be found. You want to talk about a messed up murder? You want to talk about a beaut? Ofra Chaza and her husband, Doron Ashkenazi, are a medical beaut. All right? They both died in their late 20s, early 30s. Look, we'll go on. With Ashkenazi gone, they didn't have to talk about an HIV test. Dr. Hiss performed it post-mortem, but was never released. So the Chaza death withered away, but not with me. People found me because of my Rabin book. And now I'm going to introduce Shimon Peres. It was Peres, former You know, at the time, I think, President of Israel, who invited the Chazan to sing at the signing of the Oslo Accord, at the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony, Peres was in charge of the Israeli atomic program, which Rabbi Uzi Meshulam told me was responsible for the kidnappings, in return for which they got the atomic bomb and all kinds of horrible stuff in the early 50s. They kidnapped thousands of children, including, at least in this movie, Ofer Chaz's brother. Now, just so you know how serious and awful the crimes are in Israel, and look, there's stuff that came before here and there, whatever, you can sort out, but I met the Chaza family. In fact, in Tel Aviv, near the Shalom Tower, and they told me the whole story. And I quoted in this article. All right, here's the quote from one of her family. She was murdered because of the film. I was there when it was shown in Cinematheque. It was chopped up. She told us that she named names in the movie. I don't recall that she named Yisrael Kesar and Yisrael Yeshayahu for being the capos of the kidnappings. That wasn't in the final edit of the film. The film was never shown again. Copies of the original are floating around, but Arnon was forced to bury it and Ofer got buried. And then I asked, well, how'd they do it? Who'd they do it? What happened here? Here's the answer. We all believe she was deliberately infected with AIDS, and now there was no reason to die of it. But she was weak for a year, and she didn't see her doctor to complain. She wasn't given treatment. And I said, why not? We found out later her doctor, Mimi Hatman, was a friend lover of Doron Ashkenazi's. They were in on the murder together. Do you remember the nonsense the media spread that Ofer kept her AIDS a disease so her fans wouldn't be disappointed? In other words, she preferred to die than to treat her disease. What a story, and the public bought it. The twist was she died of shame. So, this is me now. Ashkenazi married her to murder her? Yeah, he was the hitman. For who? Shabak Mossad? No, he was Peres's boy. He was on assignment from him. Peres was the last survivor of the gang that arranged the kidnappings. Which, by the way, I add, Uzi Meshulam told me the exact same story. He would do anything to keep the lid on the affair. He found out that Ofer was on the Yemenite children bandwagon, and he panicked. She was bigger than he was. She was more popular and more trusted. She was the biggest threat to the scandal ever faced. She was so naive, she couldn't understand the danger she was putting in herself by making the movie. Now, I'm just quoting part of it. But I'm going to go on to this interview. It's a long interview. Peres took her everywhere. All right, she was, well, his bad girl. And I say, because of the Oslo and Nobel ceremony, and they say, he took her everywhere. If Margaret Thatcher was in town, he'd bring her to serenade her. I have the picture of the event. He began her affair way before the peace process. He saw her first role in Hafrecha. It's Hebrew for the tart. And he took a shine to her. That's how he met Ofra. And then I asked, are you really saying Peres had an affair with Ofra Chaza? And their family answered, actually it was one guy. Initials FM. What the heck? Oh, for years, there are people in the family who say he raped her, but I call it mind screwing. She's a young, naive singer who came from the slums. Now she's invited to Oslo to perform for famous diplomats. How could she refuse him later in the hotel? He was using her to satisfy himself and sell peace. He had it made. He was getting a bigger career boost with her playing along. Now, I'm not sure everyone heard that. That's something I'm going to be putting out once again, but I was asked, more than just asked, they called me from everywhere to represent the Yemenite children. They were killing the people off. Folks, I know you can't hear what I'm saying, and I didn't realize how much it hurt. It really hurt an awful lot. I didn't know this was happening in Israel, but it was, because Rabbi Meshulam told me. And I went to his house, and I counted the bullet holes in his house. I counted over 50, 60, and, well, one of his followers, 19-year-old Shlomi Hasulin, was murdered. I got a phone call. After I visited the Meshulam house, I got a phone call from his wife. She told me he wanted to meet with you. I said, fine, I'll meet with him. She said, it's at Sharon prison. I said, okay. The whole gang, there were 30, 35 of them, all locked up into a deep basement room of Sharon prison. Sharon was allowed to see me, but he blasted a radio so no one could hear us back. I guess it didn't work. He told me why he wanted the meeting. Now, folks, you've never heard this name before, and I'm hoping somebody will actually go into my website and find us at libertyarchives.com for a little bit of a recap. The Shifris family had assumed control of his movement, and now Meshulam was certain they were Shabak infiltrators destroying his movement from within. He asked me to take over his movement. You know, I didn't think twice. I said yes. I was going to be spokesman for the lost Yemenite children of the 50s. That's what I said. But I didn't realize that the mother, by the way, it was the mother's son, Ora Shifris, who had taken over the movement. She had become spokesman, and she had guided it away from, she guided it into obscurity, all right? Slickly, very slickly, but into obscurity. And look, her advocates, his advocates, Meshulam's advocates, would have nothing to do with me. They couldn't stand up to this feisty Ashkenazi lady. That's not Doron Ashkenazi, that's from Europe Ashkenazi, or a Shifris, who had shanghaied their fight for freedom. Now, folks, you have to understand. People can't understand this. The Israel that you've been told existed didn't exist. This Ben Gurion was working as prime minister with Paris to sell Sephardic children. Now, it wasn't just the Yemenites, all right? 4,500 of them disappeared. And Meshulam showed me pictures in cages, children in cages being shipped to America. Above 500 survived. One became the daughter of the Attorney General of Israel, if you could believe this. 4,000 died torturous deaths. They died. They were taken from their parents, right from the hospital beds, right from the nurseries, and shipped off. In return, well, the figure I was getting was they got $50,000. All right, that's the figure I was given. But there was always one added addendum. They got atomic secrets. Peres was the head of the Israeli Atomic Energy Board. He was in charge of getting the nuke for Israel. He sold the Yemenites. And I can understand why he would not want beyond justice to be shown throughout Israel. In its original form, it might have named him, but it certainly named everyone else who was responsible. Now, after this happened, I got a phone call from David Bakhtiar's, his name, Belchazan, I'm sorry. I got a phone call from the director of a film that, folks, I'm going to ask you to go on the internet and look up. It's called Absolute Justice. It's about the kidnapping. Listen to this. You won't believe this. I don't believe this. To this day, I don't believe this. 1,500 Sephardi children were taken from the classrooms. If an Ashkenazi kid stood up, he was told to sit down. They were taken from the classrooms and nurseries. They were taken to a camp. Their heads were shaved and marked in 6, 7 little regions and blasted with gamma rays, with X-rays. Every Sephardic child. Every one of them. Now, this film about the Sephardi children, just go on the internet and write about Sephardi children, Absolute Justice, whatever you want. It's in English as well. The Jews don't take this crap. And we fought back. We don't want our heads blasted with X-rays. 6,000 died within a year. That's in the film. And watch it. Many, many more were crippled. All were affected. Not Ashkenazi kids, Sephardi children. And why? They were told that they had ringworm. A terrible disease. You don't want ringworm. Let us shave your head. Let us take a marking pen. Let us mark it up in 5, 6, 7 different places and blast you with X-rays. They didn't know the effects of radiation in the early 50s. It was new. They were experimenting. Peres promised them an entire race of people to have a genetically pure experiment. And that's what happened in Israel. And guess what? The Sephardic children and the Yemenite children, they're still proud of Israel. They're disgusted by labor Zionism, by David Ben-Gurion and Shimon Peres. And Peres is still alive. And we want him to stand trial. That's what we want. Now, why I'm in America, it was called an accident. It should have ended my life. It really should have. But it didn't. And I just ran. And I shouldn't have, but other friends of mine had died. I always bring up my friend Joel Boehnerman. He died at 53. And we spoke about it on the show last week after a meeting with Vince Marchetti. And it got to be too strange a world. It got to be too dangerous. Orfa Haza was knocked off. All right. The actual hitman may have been Doron Ashkenazi, but he got knocked off too. There's an underworld in Israel, and not an underworld the Jews are proud of. They want it over with. And that's what some of us try to do. And strangely enough, these are the most patriotic, devoted followers of Israel. And that's where you have the problem. On the one hand, they dragged us into this country. On the other hand, people want to drag us out, and you have to defend yourself. That's the problem. But there's a worse problem. The structure of Israel, the media, the banks, it's still run by these awful, awful, awful people. And what are you supposed to do about it? This Yehuda Hiss, now I want you to know, people, our previous guest was talking about how he protested. I protested, oh my goodness, Carmel Hiss. Yeah, that's his name, Hiss. He was in charge of the Shabak during the Rabin assassination. Couldn't have been done without him. He spoke at a meeting, and the people of the meeting were members of this thing, Bridge. Oh my goodness. You know, my memory is not what it should be. A protest group. They were settlers. Well, they went and protested him, but they protested him like a real diplomat. He was going to be the ambassador to Denmark. They were going to get him out of the country in a big hurry. And I watched this. I said, what are you people doing? Bridges for Peace, I think it's called. It doesn't matter. What they did was ineffectual. They were actually, oh God, rewarding him for being a diplomat. Folks, I protested. All right, folks, you heard me for another half hour, and I'm glad you did. I think I repaired the first portion a bit with the last. Here's hoping. This is Barry Chamish next week with Robert Singer. Good night, all.